Kurtis Tommy Lee Special 1937. The 1937 Kurtis Tommy Lee Special was a hand-built Bowtail roadster built by Frank Kurtis for Tommy Lee. The build was started in 1936, and prior to this, Kurtis had designed and built a 1934 LaSalle Bowtail roadster for Tommy's good friend Willett Brown. Tommy liked Willett's car, and he wanted Frank to build him a just as nice, or even nicer car. Frank had also built 3 midget racers for Tommy, and it was through these that Tommy had been introduced to the California racing fraternity and the hot rodding community. Tommy envisioned his new car as a streetable race car, or an extremely sophisticated hot rod for the dry lakes. A car that would make him proud against the four-port Rileys and hot Fords that the kids in the eastern parts of Los Angeles were building. So he asked Frank to build him a car, the fastest, hottest looking custom speedster possible. The Cord 810 had just come out, and Frank suggested that he would base the speedster's front on the new Cord. Tommy agreed, and a 1936 Ford frame and running gear was chosen as base for the build. The body was mostly hand-formed in aluminum, except for the doors that were made out of steel. The front fenders were taken from a Cord 810, and the rear fenders consisted of 2 Cord fenders welded together. The Cord 810 inspired grille consisted of groomed grille bars that wrapped around each side. The V'd windshield was hand-fabricated by George Duval. The car had wind-up windows, but no top. Inside, the Speedster was fit with a dash panel with bronze casting filled with etched horizontal elements and 7 custom-faced Stewart Warner gauges. The steering wheel on the car was borrowed from a Cadillac. Frank suggested using a brand new hopped-up flathead Cadillac V8 engine as power plant for the car, but Tommy told him that he wanted a true racing engine. He wanted a twin-cam Feinhauser engine like those used in midgets, just quite a bigger version. By then, Meyer and Drake had bought a Feinhauser engine company and taken over the production of the Feinhauser racing engines. Meyer and Drake made a new engine for the car that displaced 318 inches. The engine had twin cams, and an estimated 300 horsepower. The engine was the largest Feinhauser engine ever built. The engine was hooked to a LaSalle 3-speed gearbox and a Columbia 2-speed rear end. The car had lowering gearing for drag racing, and a tall ratio for high-speed driving. The car featured Oldsmobile front and rear bumpers that were easily removed for high-speed runs. The fenders were also easily attachable. The exhaust system consisted of 4 separate coiled pipes that eventually exited the engine bay and ran along the side of the car. A shorter competition exhaust could be easily adapted. Tommy primarily drove his car on the street, but he also took it to the dry lakes where it was clocked at 123 miles per hour in street trim, and 130 miles per hour without the fenders. The Tommy Lee Special was completed in 1937 for a reported cost of $25,000. A price that made it more expensive than most Duesenbergs at the time. The car was fast, and good-looking, but it was by no means the car of Tommy's dreams. As Kurtis advised, the Cadillac V8 would have been a much better choice for the car. As it turned out, the rough racing engine was not well suited for the highway. In trials at the Muroc Dry Lake, it could not even keep up with the better Ford-powered hot rods of the day. According to Tommy's later mechanic, Bud Stump, the body on the car felt flimsy, and the 4-banger Offie telegraphed every power stroke to the steering wheel and cockpit. The engine tended to rev up too high for the LaSalle 3-speed transmission, and kept breaking gears. So Tommy, who about the same time discovered exotic coach-built European Grand Touring sport coupes and roadsters, decided to put the car into storage on the 7th floor of the downtown Cadillac garage. During the late 1940s, Tommy was involved in an accident that left him with spinal injuries, severe back pain, and many other ailments. He was on heavy medication, but his ailment also left him with depression. On January 13 of 1950, Friday the 13th, he leapt from the roof of the Belnessier building in Los Angeles. He was 43 years old, and left behind a $10 million fortune, a huge automobile and aircraft collection, a radio station, and a television business. His uncle inherited most of the assets, but Willett Brown was able to secure all of the cars. The Kurtis Speedster was purchased by Mr. Madison in the late 1950s. The car was without an engine and had been sitting in a Los Angeles wrecking yard. It would pass through several other owners, eventually becoming just a frame, running gear and body shell. Ownership later passed to Steve Alcala of El Segundo, California. Steve, who was a talented craftsman at California Metal Shaping Company, used his skills and brought the body back to original condition. Steve dove headlong into the restoration and was determined to save as much of Frank Kurtis' handiwork as possible. He even contacted Kurtis for advice on the project. After the bodywork had been painstakingly restored, Mr. Alcala purchased a 270 cubic inch Offie, which was rebuilt under the auspices of Offie guru, Joe Gemsa. Upon competition, the car was debuted at the 22nd annual Le Cercle Concours d'Elegance in 1989. It later appeared at the 40th annual Pebble Beach Concours in 1990. Since then it has competed at the Monterey Historics, and won major awards at Amelia Island, Castle Hill and Pebble Beach. In 2007 the Tommy Lee Special was sold at the Monterey Sports and Classic Car Auction presented by RM Auctions. The estimated value of the car was somewhere between $250,000, $350,000. The bidding did not reach the estimated value, and the car was sold for $210,000 including buyer's premium. January 22, 2010 the Kurtis Tommy Lee Special was sold at the 2010 Gooding & Company Scottsdale auction. The estimated value of the car was listed as $250,000, $350,000. The exact estimate that was used when it was sold in 2007. The car sold for $285,500.